I think it's definitely summertime. As if, like, this is the first time all summer that it's hit almost 90 degrees here.
And I'm sitting here in a Snuggie.
Well,
It's cold in the basement.
We have the AC going.
Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty hot.
Yeah.
But it's good. Welcome to While She's Napping. I am Adam.
And I'm Cindy.
Hey, so last week was, I don't want to say controversial with the toxic masculinity episode, but a lot of people probably think I'm an asshole now.
Well,
I'd imagine.
It was certainly controversial between us. The conversation didn't end at the episode. Let's just say that.
It's definitely something that we've talked about more so than other episodes after recording.
Yeah, there's a lot to it.
But yeah, I think a lot of the topic of toxic masculinity last week is a nice segue into today's conversation about cancel culture. Only because there are some things that, online, when is broached the word, approached of that topic, to me, I'm saying to myself, there are certain things I cannot put on the internet about how I feel about this, at risk of being canceled.
Yeah, I mean, I said that about when we first started this project, and, that I'm always very cautious about the way that I say things, and I try to make sure that I'm saying them in the right way and not being offensive. And you had said to me, you're gonna offend people. It's just gonna happen.
Well, there are things that I know that I can't say because I know they come off offensive. What I'm trying to tell you about, just say how you feel, because you're going to get offended. People are going to get offended no matter what. It's more of the things you consider to be innocuous, someone is going to be outraged about, and you just can't control it. That means you just can't say anything.
Well, I think there's a lot in the way that you present it. And
sure.
Yeah. But, well,
anyway,
let's not bury the lead.
Sure. Let's get some house cleaning out of the way. First of all, we have a new like on the Facebook page, so we appreciate that. If you guys want to support the show, you could do so by subscribing to it. We're on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, basically wherever you get your podcast fix from. We'd appreciate it if you subscribe to it, if you tell your friends about it. Basically, this whole podcast that we have developed since day one has taken a complete 180 into a different direction. We were going to focus more on how these topics and these sociological, philosophies or phenomena sort of impact us in a parental way. Mm-hmm. But now we're just talking.
Yeah. Well, I still think pretty much every topic we've covered does have a link to parenting in some way.
This definitely does not. Cancel culture.
This is probably the one that doesn't.
But,
well, I'll accept, as she grows older, she's going to observe this phenomenon herself, and she may take, a stance one way or the other. And I still think it's good that we are prepared to talk to her about it.
Sure. Having said that, if you want to subscribe to us, please do. We appreciate it. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, we appreciate it if you can take the time to give us 5 stars and a quick review. Helps us out a lot, helps branch out the podcast to more and more people. But again, word of mouth is crucial when it comes to growth of any startup, any sort of independent project that people are doing. So if you could take the time, if you're talking to someone about cancel culture or toxic masculinity, you're like, oh, hey, Rhode Island's a thing. You should listen to this podcast. Reference them to While She's Napping. Rather, refer them to While She's Napping. We appreciate it. Make that your little special project if you can. If you find yourself talking to someone about anything and it's an in-depth conversation, bring it to our attention, because we would love to have that sort of suggestion for the show. And also let them know, hey, there's this podcast out there called While She's Napping where a husband and wife just bicker the whole time. Basically.
Definitely last week. That's what it was.
Do you want to take over the socials?
Yeah. So we are on Facebook. That's where we always put up the polls if we're doing that before an episode. So that's facebook.com/while she's napping. A good place to leave your input and feedback. You can also leave a review there on Facebook. We're also on Instagram at While She's Napping. We put our polls in the Insta stories as well. And then on Twitter at She's Napping Pod. And if you would like to remain anonymous, you can email us.
Good, you can take it.
whileshe'snapping@gmail.com.
We'd also like to thank people all over the globe for connecting with us, specifically the United States, Canada, India, Nepal, Brazil, Spain, and the UK for participating in our discussions. Also specifically in the US where we reside, of course, Rhode Island, Arizona, Massachusetts, California, New York, Virginia, Connecticut, Florida, Louisiana, New Hampshire, and of course parts unknown. We appreciate you guys listening. We appreciate the support. We hope we are providing you with some, not only some entertainment, but some thought-provoking material for you to bring to your peers if you so choose. Or if you want to make fun of us and say, these people are stupid. I know I'm stupid. Cindy's not stupid. I'm stupid. But if you want to say to your peers, hey, there's this husband and wife podcast. The wife is very bright, but that husband's stupid.
Trying to make up for some of the things you said on the topic.
No, because I stand behind them.
I know.
I stand behind them.
But in all seriousness, we're covering topics that just pique an interest or have started conversations between us and things that we talk about and like to kind of analyze and take a deep dive into. But we're not experts in any of these things. We're simply just giving our perspective as just like average people.
Let me tell you something. I'm not an expert in anything.
Right. Exactly. That's what I'm saying.
Anything.
Yeah.
But today's topic of cancel culture or call out culture or whatnot, I think it's important that we touch on it. So the reason why this is a hot button issue today is because there was an open letter signed by 150 scholars, high profile names, academics, some of them not so high profile, but some of them in high positions, not of authority, but of, I don't know, in various journalistic
right, a lot of
fields.
Authors.
Right.
Yeah.
There was this open letter to end cancel culture, and it never really resonated with me. I know this was a phenomenon that existed, and I just thought it was a Twitter joke at first, and I obviously knew there were repercussions for people saying some pretty off-colored stuff, and I don't necessarily mean that in a racial way. I mean just in general, just some very bad things. This, for me, before we get into it and define it, this to me really is only applicable to high-profile people. Now, I know there are some regular, ordinary people that, especially with today's use of technology with phones, there's recordings of people saying some pretty racist shit out there. And yes, that's call-out culture. It's not necessarily canceled, even though they're losing their jobs. These people are just paying for the consequences of their actions. They specifically are not being canceled because there's no consumerism surrounding them and that they depend on it in order to thrive in their field.
Right. I think in order to be canceled, you need to have a brand or a platform or something behind you to be canceled.
You have to have celebrity status.
In some way. I mean, I guess there are also ordinary people, though, who go viral for doing something terrible.
Going
or saying
viral
something.
doesn't mean you're being canceled.
I know, but that can lead to, like you said, losing their job or losing their, losing friends, losing social status, whatever. Like there are still consequences, but it's not, in the same sphere as someone who has an actual platform or a brand or something that can be, taken off the shelves or their whole business can dissolve.
Right. Right.
So there is I think it exists, but it doesn't rise to the level of, it's not really like a phenomenon as much, I think, as when it involves someone with a platform.
So this open letter was, the two names that jump out to me the most is Noam Chomsky and J.K. Rowling. Mm-hmm. I've heard both different pronunciations of them. Before we get into that, because again, I think this is what is making this topic more discussed this week rather than in previous times, why don't you take the floor and sort of define what cancel culture is?
I thought you had something already.
Do you want me to do it?
I can take a stab at it.
Sure.
I think you've been paying more attention to this than I have.
Yes.
So feel free to correct me. But my interpretation is it's, a large scale kind of a groupthink mentality of when someone is just completely shut down because of something that they've said or done or put out there. I think it ranges from something that someone says, like you said, you noticed it mostly on Twitter. It seems to be where it takes place a lot of times. So something that someone tweets or says, and I think it can also be related to when something that someone does. Like we have the example of Louis C.K. was another one we were talking about. So I think there's kind of different categories. It's like something that someone says, then there's actions, which they could even have a criminal link. It could be something that someone did, committed a crime. But I think it can also be different components of marketing or brands. Like Aunt Jemima was, some people are calling that cancel culture. The fact that brand is being changed. So I think there's a lot of different kind of branches of it that you can look at. But I think mostly what we're talking about is the speech, the one when someone says something or tweets something. And my interpretation of reading the open letter is that that's what they're addressing.
So I understand the notion of saying something that is as close to objectively hateful as possible. You look at some of the things that, I don't know, James Woods or Candace Owens, and I don't want to pick on them specifically, but they are spouting out misinformation. Both of these individuals aren't necessarily canceled. They're sort of just called out for the misinformation. I don't have a problem with that. I don't have a problem with people having, however dysfunctional it is, having some sort of open dialogue. I do have a problem with, say, and I'm just using high-profile situations or high-profile moments that people can instantly recognize. The Trump tape, the grab her by the pussy tape, that needs to be called out, right? And it did. It was. He became president, unfortunately, but.
So he wasn't canceled.
If he was still just a person on The Apprentice, that show would have been canceled for good reasons, right? And I think for something as objectively heinous as that, it should be called out.
But I wasn't prepared to get into any conversations about Trump, but was it objective? Because there are a lot of people who still defend it and say, that's just locker room talk. It's no big deal.
Because he was running for president. I think if he wasn't running for president... What does that tell you? Shouldn't
the standard be higher, not lower?
I don't want to get into a political discussion here, but I do think because he had a base behind him and he was already the nominee for the Republican Party, people were willing to excuse it just for the sake of getting a Republican into president. Right or wrong? I think that's wrong.
That's probably
I'm saying that's the truth. But if it wasn't a presidential candidate and he was just a celebrity, I think he would have paid. I think he would have been canceled.
Yeah.
Rightfully so. So that I don't have an issue with. I don't have an issue with people paying for heinous speech such as that. The problem I have is when it comes to these areas that are new or gray areas that we still don't have complete information for, and someone says something, they're canceled or called out because it doesn't fit into this, I don't want to say widely accepted, but vocally accepted ideology. So for instance, J.K. Rowling, I know there is a bunch of things that she has said, right?
Okay. I want to preface this really quickly with the content of what her statements have been. We're going to try not to get into a debate about those themselves.
Sure.
About, the discussion having to do with the transgender community and the transphobia that she's being accused of and all of that. We do have feelings about that. Maybe we can cover it on another episode, but we're going to try, at least I'm going to try really hard to, address that when it's necessary for this conversation, but we're really going to try to focus on the response and the cancel culture.
Sure. Yeah.
So I just wanted to give that.
That's fine.
We're not disregarding any of the content of what she has said, but we're just going to try not to get lost in the weeds of that right now, just for the sake of being able to talk about cancel culture as the topic.
All right. So put it this way. I'll start on a baseline example. I identify myself as a man, of a male since birth till this moment. I don't have any inner conflict with that. I don't have any...
You're a cisgendered person.
Sure. I don't even know what that means, but I'm not denying that.
It means
you
identify with your gender. You identify with the sex that you were born as.
Fine. I'm not discounting that. I don't know these terminologies. So I just don't know. I'm not familiar with him. This is part of what I'm talking about.
Yes.
I don't know enough about this community other than, in my opinion, they should be free to express themselves. They should be there. It doesn't hurt anybody.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't negatively affect anybody in terms of my evaluation of it. I have no issues. They should be granted the same rights, same privileges, same everything, autonomy as anybody else. I don't have an issue at all with it. I'm not anti-trans, I guess you could say.
No, not at all.
So
I'll come back to. I have something about that.
The specific tweet that I'm referencing about J.K. Rowling is when she says biological sex exists. That is a fact. This is water's wet. 1 + 1 is 2. Biological sex exists. That is a fact. For there to be backlash about that is indicative of what this open letter is signifying, because we can't suppress facts. We can't suppress science and mathematics and technology. We can't suppress this because it's hurtful, because you can, or it's hurtful to some, because you can theorize, you can come up. It's not outlandish anymore that if a pocket of very vocal people say 1 + 1 = 2 offends me, cancel that person, there's a problem.
Okay. That I agree with you. Stating that fact as science, that there are two sexes, there's the male sex and the female sex, that is not what got her the backlash, to my understanding.
There's previous stuff.
Yes, there's before and after
Sure.
that led into that gives context to what she was saying. And that's not the reason she's being canceled or getting the backlash she is. It's because the timing of when she made these statements, first of all, I believe it was during June, so during Pride Month.
Mm-hmm.
And so that just doesn't look great. Like, what message are you trying to send by stating these facts? And what is the intention? Like, no one, it's not like it's a huge topic of conversation right now that's affecting anybody one way or the other to say there are only two biological sexes or there aren't. Like, what was she trying to say? And the only conclusion that someone can come to when you try to if she's not going to explicitly state what her intention is behind saying that, then people are going to fill in the blanks and they're going to come to a conclusion based on the entirety of all the other statements she's made in regards to this topic, which paints a pretty bad picture.
So what are the other things that she has said? Because I was waiting for you. I purposely did not research that because I know you had, and so I wanted you to present them.
Yeah, so I didn't, I don't think I've seen everything. I don't think I have the full timeline, but so again, our conclusions may be off because maybe we've missed something.
Sure.
But my understanding is that those tweets that you've pointed out, the ones that appear to just be simply stating scientific facts, came right after a tweet that said, it was in response to an article that identified people who menstruate. That was the way that they were referring to. It was like a person who menstruates. And she retweeted that with commentary that was extremely sarcastic and pretentious and offensive in the way that she said it, because she said, people who menstruate, I think there might be a word for that. Woman. Like, she was like doing plays on words of the word woman. Sure. Implying only women menstruate. And I'm just like,
did she mean that in a biological sense?
What? It doesn't, I'm saying...
I'm not saying I agree or disagree. I'm asking, how did she mean that? But it is true in
a biological sense, but everybody knows that. But to say only women menstruate is not true if you recognize a trans man as a man. He might still menstruate because he was biologically born female. So you're excluding all of these other groups of people who don't fit into your preconceived notion of what a woman is.
I'm not saying that's a preconceived notion. I'm legitimately asking, did she... Again, we're trying to dig, and we're not...
I know, I said we weren't going to get into the weeds on it.
I don't know
I think it's necessary.
Her state of mind at the time, if she was thinking legitimately the female sex...
Then say that.
Sure.
Instead, she made a joke of it and made it sound so sarcastic and snarky. Oh, I think there might be a name for that. Okay, and then she followed that with those tweets about biological sex. So if that had been all she said was simply, science tells me that there are two biological sexes, or if she presented it as like, so here's where I come in on this. Like, if you are going to say something that you know is going to be controversial, you need to frame it in a way that invites productive conversation. And if you don't, you need to be prepared to deal with the consequences of people reacting to how you are coming off.
I get it. And I do think there's merit in saying, in order to grow intellectually, and I'm not saying this is what she was doing. Just take that aside for a second. In order to grow intellectually, you need to, or in order to also have an intellectual dialogue, you have to risk being offensive. Mm-hmm. It's par for the course. It comes part and parcel when it comes to expanding on these kind of new things. Like, right. I'm not saying transgenderism is brand new today, so we should disregard it. I'm just saying in the timeline and scope of human history and how open it is, it's new. Right. It is a new thing.
I think that's something that similar to all the racial inequality and privilege and Black Lives Matter and all of these topics that have been like brought to the forefront now. I think a lot of people are learning that I'm not always going to say the right thing. I'm going to mess up. I'm going to say something offensive. I'm going to use the wrong terminology. I'm going to use the wrong language, whatever. And that is okay, because that's the only way to advance the discussion and to learn. I agree with that, but your presentation matters.
It does.
To acknowledge, I don't know everything about this. I'm not familiar. This is outside of my world. This doesn't directly impact me, but I want to learn more, and I want to do it in a way that doesn't hurt people.
Right.
So set it up for that conversation. And if you fail to do that, and you have a huge platform and you have thousands or millions or however many people who you know are going to see this, and you haven't presented it in a way that's inviting productive dialogue, then I'm sorry, I have very little sympathy for the backlash.
So I don't necessarily think there shouldn't be backlash about that. I understand the backlash. What I have a problem with is pushing people to feel the same way. So I think I can be, let's use something a little bit more, and I'm not, again, disregarding that community. I'm just saying in terms of the state of the world today, the Black Lives Matter movement is a big deal. Not to say that trans rights aren't. I'm saying Black Lives Matter seems to be at the forefront of sociological issues today. Mm-hmm. So if I say, I agree, Black Lives Matter, I stand for that message, I'm with that message. And if I say, I'm not about the all lives matter reference. Of course, in the grand scheme of thing, everybody's life matters, but
it doesn't have to be said.
Exactly. I don't want to go down that rabbit hole, but when it comes to, if I said, I understand the protesting, I'm with you. I totally get it. This is our constitutional right. We should do it. But if I say, hey, I get the looting, I understand. It's something that I'm not going to participate in. I get it. I just personally think the message might get muddied there with people that you're trying to reach. I understand why it's happening. I understand the anger. I get it. I am not in a position to say, don't do that. I'm more in a position to say, I'm not sure people are going to get that message as much as protesting, personally. Mm-hmm. But I am not going to tell you not to do any of those things. I am running the risk of being canceled by saying that.
No, I think, again, if you say it in a way that's like, I recognize that I cannot understand the position that Black people are in right now and what the Black community is feeling. You might think in your head, I don't think I would do that. I don't think I would react that way. I don't think that's productive. You can think those things, but you need to acknowledge, like you just did, but I don't really know, and I can't understand.
Right. I guess my point is that as a white person, I think I shouldn't be hard pressed to vocalize that. I don't think saying, well, you're not Black, so you can't have that opinion. I think that's wrong.
Right. It's not to say you can't have an opinion, but it's, again, acknowledging that you have this very limited perspective. Correct. With coming from someone with privilege, and you just can't understand the other side.
I'd like to.
Right,
I'd like to
but
be.
It's just not possible because you will never live that experience.
You're right. I wouldn't understand. I would like to have this conversation with someone.
Yeah, and I think that's what's being encouraged right now, but you have to do it in a way that's, you need to be humble in acknowledging that you don't know everything, right, and you can't understand, and you have to take what the person who is experiencing it and who does have that perspective, not to say your opinion doesn't matter, but obviously if you're talking about a situation that you will never have experience in and talking to someone who has lived that experience, their words are going to be more impactful. Like, I feel like that's going to carry more weight because they've had the experience.
Right. And I think someone coming from myself that has, really had a deep, I don't want to say deep, but extensively thought about this, I would say I don't think the message is being sent, but I understand why this is happening. I understand, prima facie. I understand the anger. I can't relate to it because I'm not in that position. But I would never say don't do that.
Right, you can empathize with it.
Of course.
Okay, but that's
I
the
recognize
difference.
this is not a political issue. It's a social and ethical issue.
Yes, but that's the difference. I don't think that J.K. Rowling, expressed that sentiment. I think she came across as, I have a right to say this because it's biological fact, and I'm going to disregard the entire context of everything else I've said on this issue, and I'm not going to lend credence to the people in the trans community who respond telling me this is not okay and this is offensive. Instead, she doubled down and tried to defend herself.
Sure. No.
So that's what I'm saying. Like, it's not because you said something stupid or you weren't thinking and you used the wrong word and you offended someone and then you came back with a sincere apology. That's different.
So, again, in that situation, I understand. I do think, though, that having the freedom to say things, even if they're stupid, is necessary. It is an unfortunate yet necessary evil of stupid people saying stupid things in order to recognize the good. And this is sort of like a philosophical conversation. And again, this is what I majored in. So I understand it's if you want to look at it in a religious context, you can't have heaven without hell. You can't have God without the devil. You need these counteractive balances in order to understand the value of the good things. So yes, it's an unfortunate consequence that we have racist assholes out there that say the N-word, that say terrible things. But in a free speech society, we need that to understand why it's bad. Not need. It's
no, I'm hesitating to get too far down this rabbit hole, but
do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes, but that type of openly nasty racism.
I'm not saying there
is
shouldn't be consequences.
No,
there
that's
should
not.
be
I know, but I'm
consequences.
saying subtle, covert racism is even more of an issue right now. And that's
Sure.
Yeah.
I'm saying in terms of the two extremes, the openly racist things are awful. They're repugnant. They're terrible things. And people should be held accountable when saying those things. Totally. But in a free speech society, that is a consequence of it. And someone can say, I'm free to say that. You are. You are free to say that.
Of the consequence.
But you are not free of the consequences.
And so that's where I get to I think it's up to each individual person to decide what their level of tolerance is. Like, if someone says something and you're like
I'm
with
out.
J.K. Rowling, I'm never buying another Harry Potter book. That entire franchise is canceled to me. I will never support this person because
Yes.
I don't support her values and her views. That, I think, it says something to me if enough individual people take that stance and enough people just stop supporting her franchise, it will cancel itself. Like, that will just happen. Just like if enough people find out on a smaller scale, we're not talking about celebrity, but in the real world, a business owner is saying derogatory things or discriminating against certain employees or whatever, and by word of mouth that gets out and the community stops supporting this business, they're going to go out of business. Because enough individual people decided that was not okay and they didn't want to support it. But I think social media plays such a role in cancel culture as we understand it right now, because there is the tendency for it to become a hashtag or a trend. And I think the danger comes when people don't necessarily actually go and explore what was said, or they only look at segments, which is kind of what we were talking about. Like, you were specifically referencing that one tweet or one set of 3 tweets, whatever it was, that specifically were talking about her pointing out biological sex. But that's not the end of the story. So I think when people just latch onto it because the hashtag sounds trendy, or they know other people that they generally agree with and align with are latching onto this, and so they just latch on even though they don't know what happened, I think that's when it can become dangerous, because that's just the group think. Like, And that's where messages can get distorted. I still don't think it's not, there aren't ever times where it's justified. I think there are. But I think it's important that each person, if you're going to speak out on it, like I sound like kind of a hypocrite because I admitted that I didn't really do a deep dive into all the things that J.K. Rowling has said. And I might have missed some things, but I wasn't getting involved with her cancellation. Because I hadn't looked into it and I didn't really have a full understanding of what happened, I wasn't on Twitter saying, cancel her.
So this is a nice segue because, all right, so in this open letter, there was, I don't remember the name, but it was either the head editor or CEO, someone in a high position at Vox, all right? And you have been watching some Vox documentaries, right?
Mm-hmm.
That I don't, what is it called? Hate Country or
Hate Thy Neighbor. Is that Vox?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's Vox. I could be wrong about that, and I apologize if I am. But they do present some pretty good,
well done,
documentaries and clips and whatnot on the internet. And usually, if you're left leaning or fully left, they'll come up in your newsfeed because you gear towards that. So he signed the letter, and there is, again, I want to say a trans woman, and if that's not the case, I apologize. Again, I didn't do as much of a dive into this as I should have. I mean, no offense. I believe it's a trans woman that posted on Twitter, I don't feel comfortable working at Vox anymore because this man signed the letter that includes J.K. Rowling.
Yeah.
And I don't want him fired. I don't want him called out. I just don't feel comfortable. Here's my thing. Bullshit, because you posted it on Twitter. You don't want him called out? Put it in an HR thing. Make that a company thing. Don't put it on blast on Twitter. You knew exactly what you were doing. That is wrong. If you don't want him on blast, you don't want him fired, go to your HR department or go to him directly. That's one. Two, is it possible for someone to have the same idea of, I think free speech is a thing. We should be able to spread and have a discourse on free ideas and agree with someone that's coming off as transphobic? Again, I don't know enough about J.K. Rowling. I'm not saying she is or isn't transphobic. I just don't know the details of it. Can you agree with that? Imagine if this open letter said 1 + 1 is 2. Do you agree? Yeah, I'll sign off on that. Oh, wait, Alex Jones signed off on that? I can't sign that. No, that's absurd. You can't have the same agreement of someone that might have a controversial take than you, but it's on a different topic.
Yeah, I heard this as well, that there are some people who signed the letter who didn't realize who else was signing the letter.
It's irrelevant.
But I understand what you're saying, but at the same time, there is a risk in it appears like you're aligning yourself with these other people who have signed it. And I know what the letter says, and I know that it was pretty vague and open, and it seemed like it was specifically just talking about, people's right and freedom to speak their mind and say things even if they might offend people or what, just to encourage productive conversation. But
it is not encouraging hate speech. I want to make that clear.
I know. But when one of the primary authors and the person who's probably the most prominent author of the letter, who's, signed on to it, is someone who has not done or taken the approach that's described in that letter. It's really hypocritical. And I wouldn't want to be aligned with that either.
But you're not aligning with that person.
But it comes off that, but it seems that way because she...
See, this is the problem. We're creating an ideology that doesn't necessarily align with the real world. You can agree of something that's way over on the other side and not agree with this person's personal position on something.
Right, but her actions don't align with what she put in the letter. So what I'm saying is, if that person was exemplifying the approach that was described in the letter, you could be like, yeah, I agree. I think that we should do this. But when she's saying we should be able to do X, Y, and Z, but she's over there doing something else and she's not implementing it in the way that's described in the letter, then it doesn't make any sense. Like, because then it comes off like, yeah, I agree with like this person's sentiment on this subject, that we should all be able to speak freely and all of that. But obviously her idea of what that is not what's in the letter, because that's not what she does. That's not what she did, at least.
Again, I'm not sure and this is just me speaking openly, I don't know what effort she's taking. I don't know if she's taken private effort. It doesn't have to be broadcasted. Right?
Okay, but if you're going to broadcast the thing that's getting you backlash, you should also broadcast as equally the thing that's responding to that.
Sure. My point is, should she have tweeted that out? The J.K. Rowling is about all that? No, you shouldn't. But is she free to do it? Of course. And part of learning is to have that backlash so you can create that open dialogue and say, all right, this is where I fucked up.
But you have to be receptive to the dialogue, to the people to come back. And I agree. People, first of all, we didn't even mention this yet. It should have been mentioned sooner. Sending death threats or responding to someone who says something bad with that kind of that is never okay either.
Yeah.
Like a doxing, like that's not okay. I'm not
or
talking
going
about
after
that kind
someone's family or their
yeah.
No.
That's not an appropriate response, no matter how offensive something is that someone says or how hateful or anything. Responding with violence or threats or anything is not the solution. But there are people who have responded with intelligent, thoughtful, respectful counterpoints, and like I said, she just seems to double down on what she said before.
Is she responding to these individuals? Because you have
I
to
didn't
understand
look at
the gravity of the profile she has. Mm-hmm. It is tough for me to read 5 responses to a tweet that I get, which is at best.
Yep.
I can imagine thousands of replies. It's really hard to pick out which ones.
Of course, I'm talking about other celebrities, like people within the Harry Potter franchise.
I don't know that she hasn't personally reached out
Maybe
to them.
not, but you need to do that in public. If you're going to put the controversial shit in public, you have to put your attempt at...
I don't disagree.
That's...
My point
I'm sorry,
is,
that's on her.
You can agree with some... I'm sure Alex Jones thinks 1 + 1 is 2. I think he thinks that because he's crazy. And if there was an open letter, be like, do you agree with this one principle? And because if you don't sign it, you don't agree with it,
Not
right?
necessarily.
So sure, but I can admit that someone as crazy and weird and spreader of misinformation. Him and I agree 1 + 1 is 2, and that does not mean I align myself with that ideology.
But if he's saying 1 + 1 = 2, and then this is a ridiculous example, but if he's saying 1 + 1 = 2, and that's all he's saying in the letter, but then he's using that concept or that fact of 1 + 1 = 2 to go and justify some crazy ass controversial like conspiracy theory bullshit, then would you want to align yourself? Because that's what I'm saying. Like, she's saying this in the letter.
So does Noam Chomsky? Do you think Noam Chomsky agrees with that?
I don't know.
I don't know.
So. I don't know. But I'm saying I can understand why people wouldn't want to be aligned when if she had taken the effort or made the effort to walk back these things or show that she's trying to actively learn and that she was mistaken in some of the ways that she's presented it before, and this is all she wants is productive dialogue. And I apologize if she has and I've missed it, but some of the controversial things that I've seen happened very recently, and I haven't seen anything else come out of this other than this open letter.
Yeah.
So I'm just saying I can understand why, just because she's saying this is what she's supporting and this is the message of this letter and this is the point that she's trying to make, if she's acting in a way that doesn't align with that, then I would be hesitant to sign my name on, because to her, this obviously means something different than what it means to me.
To wrap a bow on this portion of the conversation, when I read the letter, first of all, it's 3 paragraphs. It's very short. It seems like a lot of that backlash is coming, and again, I don't want to make this a political thing, but it's so divided now that if you don't have a stance on something, you're either left or right. So it seems like a lot of the backlash is coming from the left about this letter, which is really weird to me, because they say things, the forces of liberalism are gaining strength throughout the world and have a powerful ally in Donald Trump, who represents a real threat to democracy. This letter is openly stating that things that Donald Trump is trying to do as president, suppress free speech, suppress being able to say certain things, suing people that are critical of him, etc., is terrible, and that goes counter to free speech. And they're admitting that this is not democracy. This is not a free democracy. We should be able to spread these things, not spread information. We should be able to vocalize these things. And if we're wrong, we should be able to have a dialogue with it. Or maybe the person that's sensitive, or sorry, not sensitive, offended by it, maybe you're wrong. Maybe you're wrong about this, and I can have a conversation, and maybe something is illuminated in you, and you can say, okay, never thought of it that way. Maybe I should look at it or go down this road. Not saying directly about Rowling or anything. I'm saying in other issues that may come off as controversial, may come off as insensitive. Maybe the way it's said is insensitive, but if you look at the base foundation of it, it's just truth.
Right.
And we should be able to say things that are truth without fear of retribution.
I agree. But that's just not the way it works on social media and the internet anymore. And I think if you're going to put yourself out there with something that you know is controversial or that might offend people, you need to do the work ahead of time and maybe talk to some people within that community and make sure you actually do have an understanding and that your stance or your position or whatever is at least informed.
I have a soft spot for Noam Chomsky. So
do you?
I do. Anyways, let's take a break right here. We'll come back. I want to talk about how people can redeem themselves from the cancel culture.
Okay.
So when it comes to being redeemed, the biggest, as far as I can see, the most recent, rather, form of forgiveness or moving on from it is Louis C.K. And again, I'm not minimizing what he did. I'm not saying what he did wasn't serious. I'm saying it's not at the forefront of today's issues of Black Lives Matter. Not that these issues aren't prevalent all the time, or you know what I'm trying to say. It's he I think back in 2017 or 18, if people don't know, he would invite women. As far as I know, it was only a handful have vocalized it or said they were a victim of this. Invited them back to their hotel room. He would then said, "Do you mind if I perform a sexual act to myself?" They started laughing because it's an uncomfortable situation, and he would just do it. All right. So not in his defense, I'm not defending the action. I'm saying his excuse for it, poor as it is, was saying there was no, I didn't realize I was doing anything wrong. I'm just saying what he said. I don't agree with it. I think it's terrible.
He just responded to my eye roll. That's what
right.
it was.
I don't agree with it. I'm just saying this is what he said. And then he also said, I realized the power that I've had as an influencer over these people, and I completely took advantage of that. I took away from their autonomy of a free experience or something. I sort of pigeonholed them into this experience, which is terrible. And it is. I get it. It wasn't sexual assault. It was sexual misconduct.
Okay.
So he wasn't charged.
Okay.
Did
they not press charges?
I don't know.
Okay.
I just know there was no jail time sent, but he lost a lot of money. He was canceled. Right. Okay. So his television show got kicked off of FX. There was an HBO special that got kicked off. There was a movie that was coming out that got called off, and his Netflix specials got called off too. They got canceled. I agree that he should have gotten canceled. I agree that there's no excuse for that type of behavior. But over time, he started to make himself back into the limelight. He went to a comedy show at the Cellar, I think it's called, or whatever, maybe in New York or LA. And he did a stand-up to a standing ovation. Didn't mention the sexual misconduct. Didn't mention anything about the incident. This was maybe 2 or 3 years after the fact. And it seemed like he was gaining back some sort of respect, for lack of a better way to put it. Acceptance, I should say. And he's been vocal about an apology. Okay. So he has, I don't want to say had a sense of retribution, but he definitely has recognized the error that seemed genuine. It wasn't just I'm sorry, I shouldn't have done that, I should know better. It was a pretty in-depth apology.
Was it a process, though? Like, did he go through a process?
He didn't deny any... Well, I should say he did deny doing anything initially. I'm saying after his first apology wasn't, well, I don't know what the big deal is, but I'm sorry. It wasn't anything like that. It was
or like, I'm sorry if they felt victimized or something like that.
It was as far as I know, it was a genuine apology. He seems to no longer be canceled. He doesn't have as big of a platform anymore, but he's not being denied of a presence anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that goes back to what I was saying in the first half of, it's up to each individual's discretion. Like at that point, like you said, when he came back and he did a stand-up at this specific comedy club, that's up to the club owners if they want to be associated and support this person to give them the platform to perform there.
Right.
And if they do, then it's up to the people who buy the tickets and go if they're going to support him. And I mean,
stay or go.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's the thing that I think is unfortunate is that some of the people who bought their tickets and went may not be aware of what he did.
It's open mic.
What do you mean?
At the cellar, it's open mic. So they
didn't know that they didn't buy a ticket to his show.
Exactly.
Okay. So that makes a little bit of a difference. So right at that point, if they know who he is but then they already paid their cover to this.
They're paying
venue,
for an open mic experience.
Right. But then if they find out that this venue is supporting this person who they don't support, they can walk out, but that venue already has their money. But I know, I'm just saying, like, everybody has their own right to decide if they want to support that person. And I think if what they did was, really a grave misconduct, and most people can agree that it's just not okay, and there's very little redemption to come of it. Like I said before, I think that will manifest in and of itself because enough people won't want to buy tickets to his shows or won't watch his TV specials or whatever the case might be. Mm-hmm. But I think the kind of underlying thing is to where I feel like the companies that give people these platforms have a little bit of a responsibility, and why they have to choose if they're going to cancel the person or not is because for people who are viewing the show who may not know what he did and then find out after, then like Netflix, for example, could get backlash for supporting him or giving him a platform.
I understand.
So they have to protect their own business as well.
I suppose we have to have a balance of, and this is a consequence of being a celebrity, you have to have a balance of, okay, what he did was terrible. Okay. He has kids. Do the kids have to pay for that? Because this is someone that has, and again, I'm not excusing the behavior. This is just a legitimate question that we need to ask. I don't know his financial situation. I don't know how much money he saved. I don't know what he has in the bank to continue to send his kids to school. I don't know. Just listen. If this is a comedian, that's his skill. He had no reason to go to college for a different skill. He had no reason to adopt a different skill, so he's not good at anything else. He's an expert in comedy. Mm-hmm. If he's lost his income and no one will touch him, his kids are now suffering.
I'm not saying it's not worth it to talk about these situations or these families. I'm not saying that these kids should just go figure it out because your dad fucked up. But I'm saying I'm finding it really hard to drum up a lot of sympathy when there are so many people who deal with this or worse and for much less severe infractions. And I'm having a really hard time getting past that.
I suppose so in response to this, when it comes to not being canceled anymore, and I should know, being canceled isn't a forever thing. Rarely is it ever. It's usually we're putting you on the bench. It's timeout time. And
I think
look at Michael Vick.
Yeah, but the companies, because like I said before, like Netflix might lose business if they take him back too soon and give him a platform, and then people realize. But I think so maybe there are some media companies or sports teams management or whatever who are more moral than I'm going to make this sound, but I think they're just trying to read the room. And when they feel like their audience is ready to tolerate this person again, then they're going to take advantage of that and make money off of it. That's all they care about.
Chris Brown's a perfect example. We know what happened with him and Rihanna. What he did was terrible. He's still
But this is what I'm getting at
today.
I have a hard time even focusing my energy on the conversation about how we redeem celebrities.
I'm not saying redeem it.
Okay, but I'm just saying even addressing because these people have already had way more opportunity and have way more privilege than the vast majority of our population. And I feel like if this is going to be a conversation and people are going to be worried about someone like J.K. Rowling being canceled because of some dumb tweets.
No, we have to focus on the celebrities because we already established they're the only ones that can be canceled.
I understand, but I just still think that there is a parallel to a normal person who loses everything because of a bad decision and because our criminal justice system is not set up to address everything equally.
All right. Well, I think what Seinfeld actually spoke in defense of CK's return when it came to the backlash about it. There's still obviously going to be pockets of people that are uncomfortable with him coming out. But I think what Jerry Seinfeld has said is absolutely true, and it's sort of a great summation.
Yes.
Okay.
There you go.
Summation. We know the routine. The person does something wrong. That person's humiliated. They're exiled. They suffer. We want them to suffer. We love the tumble. We love the crash and bang of the fall. And then we love the crawl back. They grovel. Are you going to grovel? How long are you going to grovel? Are we, the court of public opinion, decided if he's going to come back, he'd better show a lot of pain because he's denied the public of that. So I think there's a lot of truth to that. We look at Alex Rodriguez, and I know this is not a cultural thing in terms of society, but in baseball, what he did was terrible. People are baseball purists taking steroids. A lot of people don't like it. You are exiled from the sport. Now he's loved. He might buy the Mets with Jennifer Lopez. He's cool. There was a video of him celebrating Jennifer Lopez halftime show. He's there. Oh, cute boyfriend. Everybody loves the fact that he supports Jennifer Lopez, and he should. Yeah. I'm just saying he's no longer a villain. Yeah. Over time, these things sort of sort themselves out, and I think it needs the rehabilitation process in order for that to happen. There needs to be a necessary rehabilitation process.
So I guess my response to that is not the how long will they grovel? How will they grovel? Like looking at it from enjoying the drama of this unfolding, but rather the important thing is, what are they doing with their platform now? If they've really realized the error of their ways and they are truly looking for redemption and they are truly sorry and apologetic for what they did and they realize how wrong they were, how are they now using their platform or trying to gain their platform back to send a better message or to make some kind of a difference? I feel like people who are in this position, who have celebrity, even if they've been canceled and even if they fucked up, they still have an opportunity to do something good with it for the reasons you just said. And if they're not doing that, in my mind, I'm sorry, no, you're canceled in my head.
But I think eventually you won't care. Eventually, it just is out of sight, out of mind. Life gets in the way. It's no longer an active thing, right? So again, I can only use sports examples. Right now, it seems like if you are a Trump supporter, especially in the United States, you're blacklisted, right? You're sort of I don't want to really align myself with you anymore, celebrity that, Kanye got a lot of this shit when now he's taking off the red hat and he's doing the birthday party, right? So but there was a backlash when it came to that. And again, there was a multitude of other things involved in that. But still, I think a big portion of it is he was a Trump supporter. We no longer want to support his music. You are free to do that. You are absolutely free to do that as a consumer. I will never deny you of that. Mm-hmm. But think of it this way. Does that make him less, or does that make him worse at his ability? So I think
his ability to do what?
So as a performer, as a rapper, right? So if someone says, oh, he sucks because he sucks at rapping, he's a Trump supporter. No, that's just not true. Well, I'm sorry,
I don't
this
think
is not
that's
true.
People's issue. I think that's just people being angry.
But I don't necessarily think we should blacklist someone because of their political position. So for instance, hold on, Tom Brady was not outward, but he had the Make America Great Again hat in his locker. Robert Kraft was a donator to the Trump campaign. Mm-hmm. You not you and I'm saying Patriots fan that are listening, if you so choose, at the time, you could have said, I no longer want to support this team because they're Trump supporters. You're free to do that, but then we're blurring the lines of freedom. Is he not allowed to be? Can you support Trump? This is a genuine question. Can you support Trump without being a racist?
That's in a different episode. I don't think you want me to answer that question.
So the answer is no. I don't think Tom Brady is a racist. I don't think he is.
Like, overtly racist? Are they flying the Confederate flag and going to KKK meetings? No. Do they behave in racist ways? Yes, just like all of us do.
Okay, sure. This is a nuance that again,
and I know it's just.
But because he is a Republican or because he is conservative,
not the issue. That's the thing. You're blaming people for blurring political lines with their support of whether or not they support certain people or businesses. And the reason that is, from my perspective, is because it's no longer about politics.
I should note that this was in the beginning of the campaign in 2016. This wasn't now.
Okay, fine. But
so he had 4 years to say to himself, no, what Trump's doing is kind of fucked up. I no longer support this.
I'm saying
in the beginning, could it have been, I just don't want Hillary, so I'm voting for Trump?
I mean, yes, but I don't blame people for not wanting to support or align themselves with that, because it has always been blatantly obvious that the Trump campaign and his ideologies and his approach is it's not about Republican. It's not about being fiscally conservative. It's not about being supportive of small government and kind of like the main pillars of what it means to be a Republican. It's not about being Republican or being Democrat anymore. It's about
I can agree
racial
with that.
inequality and discrimination and hate, and people's lives are at risk when it comes to this. So like, you're not supporting him because of his political affiliation or his political views. You're not supporting him because of his views in the world. Like, that's what it's not the same anymore.
But don't you see how this, again, I agree with you on that. I just find the danger of this is that you're forcing people towards an ideology or forcing people not to express an opposing ideology that doesn't necessarily fit into a liberal landscape. I think that is very dangerous. I consider myself to be pretty moderate. If I at all vocalize out loud that, you know what, there's something that some Republicans said that I kind of agree with.
That's fine.
No,
okay,
it is
I disagree.
no longer
and again,
fine.
I think it matters with the context of other things you say and the way that you say it, and how you have to take personal responsibility for how you're presenting yourself when you have this kind of a platform. Period.
Sure.
And if you're not, and you're being irresponsible, and you're not like doing the work to speak in an intelligent, educated way about these controversial issues, then sorry, you don't deserve to be in the spotlight.
I get it, but I'm saying don't you understand that this has the danger of forcing people to either vocalize something disingenuous, vocalize something. I'm not saying I'm vocalizing racial equality when I don't believe that. That's not what I'm talking about. That's not a political issue. I'm saying when it comes to politics, if I align myself with which I don't, if someone aligns themselves with the core Republican ways of life or ideologies and does not align themselves with Joe Biden, and they're saying the closest thing to that Republican ideology is Trump, not Biden, I'm voting for Trump, can we excuse that person? Is that person canceled? Is that person blackballed?
Again, I think it depends on how they say it. If they say the specific things that they disagree with Trump on, and they say, I'm going to vote Republican because that's the best alignment I can find, but here are the things that I'm going to fight for against the things that he stands for that I don't agree with.
Right. Or just don't vote.
Well, yeah, but like, I don't think you can't blame other people.
Force people into ideologies, and I think that's what cancel culture has the risk of doing. We're forcing people into vocalizing or not saying something because they don't necessarily agree with it, and it's okay. It's okay. I'm not, again, nothing racial, nothing in terms of transphobia or something. I'm saying politically, if there's something, if I say, look, I don't necessarily think the government personally should limit free speech. I don't think the government should ever force you into saying something. You should just do it out of the respect for your common man. That's why you should do it. Once the government forces you to say something, it is already restricted free speech.
Yeah,
I don't think that's right.
I'm not disagreeing with that. I'm not saying that there should be repercussions from the government, that you should be arrested because of the things that you say.
Or fined or penalized in any way.
No, but you're subject to the
criticism.
backlash from the public.
100%.
Yeah.
100% agree with that. But I'm saying if we're not able to vocalize things, and it's some things that you or someone else may disagree with, then it's not a free society.
But you are free to say it. But if you're not going to be able...
cancel culture is like a mini government, right? It's sort of
the
this...
public.
Sure,
it's the core of public opinion. And if enough people agree with the fact that you don't deserve to have this platform because you're not being responsible in the things that you say and you're not encouraging a respectful conversation or public discourse, then you're going to lose that privilege.
Is it possible that the things that I'm saying or someone says is objectively not offensive, but people are still, there's a large community of people that are offended by it, and then I'm canceled?
Again, I would love to find an example of that happening where someone said in a vacuum, they said one specific thing that was, objectively true,
without
and they got canceled.
So the closest
without any other context.
The closest thing I can think of is, remember that kid, I think it was a child, that kid with the Trump hat that went to the Native American, and he got a bunch of backlash.
Yeah, he got doxxed. It's not okay.
It was discovered he didn't do anything wrong. I've
still seen both accounts.
No. This CNN backtracked it and said under further review he did nothing wrong. It was a small headline, but the whole Twitterverse was all about this kid, all about fuck that kid, I hope he died. Like
that's not okay.
It's not okay, but
I never said it was.
He didn't do anything offensive. It turns out, and this is what I'm saying, maybe you're right, context is king, but just because something appears offensive doesn't mean it's offensive. We need to do a deeper dive into it. Yeah. And I'm not saying we should not hold people with racist ideologies accountable. Prima facie, that kid looked like he was provoking someone, but it turns out
you can only respond to the
wasn't.
Information that you have.
Exactly. And this is what I'm saying. It is up to us, just like the clips that I'm telling you about, clips that show no full context of things. It is up to us as the individual not to have the knee jerk and to do a deeper dive.
But the difference is that kid he didn't have control over the way that was presented. He was videotaped doing something and it was released with certain context and certain parts of the video or whatever.
Right.
That's different from a celebrity taking to their platform to use their platform to say something, and they have complete control over how and when they say it and with what background and context. They have complete control over that. That is different from someone being, disproportionately criticized or punished for an action that was videotaped, and the public is only able to respond to what they see.
Right, because it was presented as he was provoking
right. With any clip like that you see online, you don't know what happened immediately before or immediately after. You don't have the full context. You don't know anything about this kid. He wasn't a celebrity. We started off this
a giant lawsuit too.
Yeah, well, we started this episode with saying that really cancel culture only applies to celebrities,
I
but I think that's the reason is because he wasn't trying to send a message on his platform. Whatever he did, right or wrong, he wasn't
a camera at the time.
Sure, yeah. I mean, that's very different from a celebrity or someone with a platform initiating. Or if you were trying to initiate a productive conversation and you're trying to put something out there and say, "This is what I think, given the information that I have available to me right now," and open it up for conversation and learning. There's nothing wrong with that, but that's not how people present themselves.
I guess my point is to put a bow on this. People like Ben Shapiro, Candace Owens to an outrageous degree, James Woods, who are saying really somewhat dumb things that I disagree with. They're not being canceled.
It's dangerous. It's dangerous.
It's dangerous, but this is part of a free society.
It's dangerous because the things they are saying are not, it's not like, okay, yeah, that's factually true.
No.
It has real world consequence.
And they should suffer the consequences. My point is that I don't want to deny them of the ability to do it. I'd rather enforce the punishment.
So we did a whole special episode on Plandemic.
Mm-hmm.
Were you supportive of that being taken down?
That's different because it's a platform on YouTube that has specific rules that says if you put provable misinformation on here, it will be taken down.
Okay, Candace Owens had a bunch of misinformation in her little spiel.
And if YouTube takes it down, they're free to do
that.
But
I think they wouldn't, because there's a whole segment of the population who's going to say, that's just her opinion. That's her free speech. She's allowed to say that.
I don't know that Candace Owens' remark are as egregiously misinformed as Plandemic was. Plandemic was
Yes, I understand what you're saying, but I think that there are a lot of things
Candace
in what she said
Owens'
that are objectively disprovable. But
Candace Owens' misinformation is more geared towards an ideology, right? More geared towards just not being in touch with a community that is trying to be heard, right? Okay. She's denying that. I'm not defending it.
We could do a whole episode breaking down her video. I'm saying pandemic
is blatant misinformation about provable, measurable things.
Okay.
What Candace Owens' misinformation isn't necessarily measurable
there are some
to
things.
the same degree as pandemic is, right?
Sure.
That's all. I'm not defending it. I think what she's saying is terrible. I think what she's saying is gross.
Yeah.
But I would never deny her the right to say it. I would rather say what you want. You as an American citizen, say what you want. There are consequences. And that is what I'd rather see.
But in her case, the consequence is a bunch of white people using her as a black woman to justify their racist views.
The consequence is that the majority of people don't take her seriously and never will.
It's true, but I think it's taking advantage. I don't know. We're going to go down a huge rabbit hole, but I
can't deny an individual the right to say something stupid.
Right.
That individual can't deny me or the public to respond and say, that's gross.
Right.
I'm done with you.
Yeah.
That's all. It's a fine line.
I just think right now with how high tensions are, people are hesitant to say, I'm going to shut you down and not support you because you're a black woman. And that comes across as silencing a black voice when we are supposed to be listening.
It's a weird area.
Yeah.
Again, I don't want to get into the racial discussion. That is what this open letter is saying to me, is that I'm not defending terrible, racist, sexist, transphobic stuff. I'm not defending that sort of rhetoric. Again, it's disgusting. I don't support it. But when it comes to free speech and open free ideas, if you find it offensive, you have the right to deny that person your personal space in your head space. You have the right to deny putting your financial dollars into that person's platform or supporting that. You have that right, and I support you if that is your stance. Do it. Do that all day, no problem. I would never say that person shouldn't be saying these things in this country. We should purge that away. No.
Right, but they
say it and suffer the consequences as a result.
Consequences. And I don't disagree with the content of the letter itself. I don't disagree with that message. But I think that the part of the problem is that some of the people, well, I guess the only one I really know of that is contradictory to it is J.K. Rowling. I don't see
a lot of other people are too on the letter.
Contradictory?
To be fair. Yes.
Yeah, maybe. I didn't look into them.
Yes.
But because there's so many. But I think if you're going to say that this is your worldview and this is how you want our society to function, then you have to do that in your actions. And that's where it loses me. I agree with the premise of the letter. I agree with the message. I'm the one who puts my neck out there sometimes to talk to people who I disagree with on social media. And you're like, don't do it to yourself. Don't do it. But right. I agree. We need to try to have civil, productive conversations. It's the only way that any of us are going to learn and move forward. And I'm completely behind that. But if you're not making the effort to present yourself in a way that's open and receptive and empathetic, then it's not going to happen.
I think the reason why this, again, as a philosophy student, and I know Noam Chomsky isn't a philosophy professor, but a lot of his work does sort of bleed into philosophy. Mm-hmm. I got sort of, my eyes opened when I saw cancel Chomsky simply because he signed the letter.
Yeah.
That is you can't cancel someone for supporting the idea of free speech and open dialogue.
Again, I think having people like J.K. Rowling as primary authors of the letter it's tainting it because she's not acting in alignment. I know, I understand what you're saying, but I can also see why people would draw those lines and connect those dots.
Again, don't cancel him.
I know. Just don't support him on your own.
Or say, okay, what does he have
look
to
at
say
his
about
individual, what he says about it. Right. And also keep in mind that a lot of the people who signed, or at least some portion of the people who signed the letter, didn't know who the other authors were.
Yes. It is intellectually irresponsible just be like, oh, he signed it, canceled.
Right. I agree with you. I know what you're saying.
It's not fair to that individual. And again, some people might deserve it. But just like that Vox person I was telling you about, I get it. I understand there's that weird connection, but he might not have even known.
That
he just
she was
might,
the other.
Yeah,
right.
He might have just read the letter and said, yeah, this looks good to me.
Yeah. No, I know.
So that's all.
Yeah, there's a lot of nuance.
This was good.
Yeah.
I'm glad we did this.
Mm-hmm.
If you guys have any thoughts or I don't know, experiences with cancel culture, not that you maybe you're a celebrity listening and you were canceled, but if you have any thing you want to say about cancel culture, we would love to hear it. You can visit us on our Facebook page. That's primarily where we are doing all the interactions when it comes to episode, facebook.com/whileshe'snapping. If you want to hit us up on Twitter @She'sNappingPod, our Instagram @whileshe'snapping, email us at whileshe'snapping@gmail.com. If you want to subscribe to us at Apple Podcasts, I'll do it. Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, you can find us all there. Do you have any closing thoughts that you want to give?
I would just be curious if anyone would like to hear more about any of the cans of worms that we just kind of like pop the tab on, and you want to hear us open them up a little more.
I would love to have this conversation with you. Just don't cancel me. I want to have dialogue.
Right. We're trying to live by what we're saying, that we agree in productive, civil, empathetic conversations, and that's what we're trying to do. And so whether you agree with us or not, we want to hear from you. We are completely open to other perspectives and things that we might have missed. And if you want to hear us dive into some of those other concepts or subjects that we've touched on, but we've kind of been hesitant to take too much of a deep dive because there's so much there, let us know one way or the other.
All right.
We're open to it.
So until next week.
Yep. Take care.
Bye.